Hello guys, this is Wunderby Trading and we carry on with our weekly Bitcoin and Ethereum price analysis. As usual, we'll go straight into the content. In front of you, you can see 4 different charts and they all relate to Bitcoin. The one on the top left is the BTC futures, the one on the top right is the BTC dominance, the bottom left is the Bitstamp price for BTCUSDT pair, and the bottom right is the BTCUSDT from Binance Exchange. So, I switched off all our previous predictions just to look at the weekly time frame and to analyze the candlestick patterns. Let's look at the futures market first. We can see that the previous weeks closed in green and the volume was higher in comparison to several previous weeks. So it was highest on this impulse wave up. However, we can also see that after the price increased above 9,400, we saw some bears in the market, and that created this large wick to the upper side. However, the wick to the downside, when we crossed below the 50 MA, was almost the same in size as the bears. So in this point in particular, we can say that the previous week was the point of decision making where the bulls were trying to push and stay above the 50 MA, and they were successful in that, while we finally saw some bears on this way upwards. Let's look at the spot market, and for that we'll look into the Bitstamp exchange. Over here we have a very similar picture in terms of the bulls actually operating quite heavily, trying to support the price above the 50 MA. However, the actual volume was smaller in comparison to the previous week. So this is one of the signs that the bulls are actually getting exhausted right now. So during this week, what we expect is for the price to stay in the same region, maybe go slightly towards the 50 MA. But for the more detailed analysis, we'll switch on our predictions from the previous weeks and we'll go to the lower time frames. So let's start from the daily time frame of the BTC futures, and what we can see here is that the price was able to close the gap which was formed during the last week, beginning of last week. We were able to close it within 1 week period as we expected in our previous video, and at the same time we faced some resistance at exactly the same level. So starting from the 9,700 up to 10,000, we can see the wicks on the upside, which means that the bears are acting quite heavily on the one side. And at the same time, we can see that the RSI is more or less flat during the previous week, while the price was increasing. So this also saw us some divergence on the daily time frame, while we're coming towards the local high of 10,100 based on the daily time frame. So what we expect from here is that during this week, the price will retrace slightly towards the area of the downward channel. If at the same time we will be able to see some power from the bears and we can break this trend line, downward trend line once again, with a nice volume, then we may say that we're going back towards the downward channel, and this was just a fake breakout. Let's go to the 4-hour time frame. What we can see here is that during the Monday morning hours, we saw the small gap, and this gap was actually filled. You can say that it was filled on the 18th of May, yesterday. Currently, the price is retracing back towards the 50 MA. If we would be able to hold this, then we might expect the price to stay in that region for some time, as the zone of consolidation. If we break below this zone, as mentioned earlier, with a nice volume, we're going towards the 200 MA to check it as a support. So let's switch to the BTC dominance. The BTC dominance is going in accordance with our previous analysis from last week. We saw the nice impulse wave where the BTC was dominating the rest of the market. Currently we can see some consolidation in the descending triangle, and if we break this to the upper side, we will actually go towards the local high, which is 70% dominance of Bitcoin. If not, then we still need to check the 200 MA as a support, and then there is a 50 MA as well. Let's go to the 4-hour time frame to see more locally what's actually happening here. Once again, we can see that in between the 67% and 68%, we can see the nice consolidation going on. On the 4-hour time frame, we are below the 50 MA. And there is still a potential to go towards the 200 MA to check it. At the same time, this will be still a nice retracement from the overall upward move, which will come right towards the 50% of Fibonacci retracement. Let us now look at the spot market for BTCUSDT from Bitstamp. This is the longest history we have, so this is exactly why we're using this particular chart for the long-term analysis. And once again, we're in the daily time frame. Over here, during the previous week, we saw that the price was dropping and holding at the region of 8,600. We're saying that it's supposed to fulfill the gap of the futures, so the price should go up, and this is exactly where it went. And at the same time, this rectangle that we draw, this area that we draw last week, we are staying in exactly the same area as a zone of consolidation. Once again, when the price was going above the 9,800, we can see the wicks of the candlesticks with the nice volume increasing if we go to the more smaller time frames. So which means that we are currently in the zone of consolidation. So what we expect from this week in particular is for the price to start rebouncing and follow this prediction that we are currently in the consolidation zone. This can hold for a month or even longer, and then when we can see some nice volume would be accumulated either on the bottom of the channel, which will signal that the bulls are actually ready to break above this long-term downward trend, which is actually going from the year 2018 peak. Or if we would see some accumulation in the upper side of that area, that will mean that the price of Bitcoin would probably drop and will go towards the at least the 50 MA and maybe even to find the second bottom of the year. Let me now go into the Binance Exchange, where we'll now look at the smaller time frames, because Binance Exchange is where we trade during the short-term periods. So we'll go to the 4-hour time frame. What we can see here is the situation in which the previous two peaks, the price was slightly increasing while the actual RSI was decreasing. So it shows us some weakness, it shows us a divergence, it shows that the bulls are getting exhausted, because we can look at the decrease in volume. So basically the peak was on the 14th of May, and after that we can see that the volume was decreasing while the price was trying to rebound during this second wave. So if we're gonna break below the 50 MA, then next stopping point would be around 200 moving average. Just to make sure that we're on the right track, we'll look at the Fibonacci retracement, so the previous upward movement, and actually the area of 50% of Fibonacci retracement, so around 8,400 to be exact. This is where we should expect the price to retrace. However, what is worrying in the more long-term analysis is that if we form the second top over here, then the price would check the area of 8,500, then slightly increase towards probably the area of 9,000, and then will drop even further. In that case, this double top scenario would be complete and the pattern will be quite active. So this is one of the scenarios which is possible if we will see the increase in the volume during the downward move over here towards the retracement and retest of the 200 MA. So the overall conclusion for the BTC, we're currently in the consolidation area. The market currently is trying to identify what to do next. Either the bulls will be recharged and will carry on with the upward movement, or the bears will be dominating and therefore the price will dump in nearest future. Let me now look into the Ethereum price. So, on Ethereum USDT pair and on the weekly time frame that you can see in front of you, once again we switched all our previous predictions just to look at the candlestick patterns. And what we can see here is, once again, when the price was going above $210, we saw some resistance from the bears which was coming in. A very similar scenario right now during the beginning of the week is happening, so we can see that this week is formed a little bit. Throughout the week, we might expect that the price will close with the bearish sign, so in red. And even though we checked the 50 MA and the volume and the price increased quite nicely after this recheck, the volume is actually going down on the weekly time frames, so which is not a good sign. Let us switch back all our predictions and go to the daily time frame to see what's actually going on right here. So once again, we try to break below the upward channel that we started from 16th of May. And at the same time, that was the nice breakout with a nice volume. However, the price was able to slowly recover towards exactly the same area of 215, after which it starts showing some weakness. And at the same time, we can see that volume profile is signaling that we are facing a nice area of resistance over here. So, taking this into consideration, let's go to the more local time frames on the 4-hour chart. And a very similar scenario we can see over here in relation to the BTC price. So on the one hand, we can see that the price was not able to break above the $215, while showing us the divergence on the 4-hour time frame, the divergence both on the RSI and volume as well. We can see a nice engulfing candle on the 4-hour chart for the Ethereum USDT, which is a bear sign. So what we expect here is for the price to retrace slightly and then to touch the upward channel, to test the upward channel. This would be the ideal scenario right now. In this zone, we would be able to determine whether we still have any bulls left in that market. So to be honest, it looks more like the bearish scenario rather than a bullish one, especially taking into the consideration that we're trying to break the same area over and over again. However, the volume is picking up, the volume profile is picking up over here, and we are reaching towards the maximum volume in February 2020, which is roughly the bottom of that accumulation phase, after which we saw a huge decrease in the price. So the overall conclusion for the Ethereum price is that we should see the downward movement towards the end of the week. We should see the downward movement during this week. If we would be able to break the upward trend line once again with a nice volume, the 50 MA and the 200 MA would be acting as a support, and would need to see how the bears will develop during this attack, whether they will be able to actually show some strong move and go towards the area of 170, which was the previous large zone of consolidation. So, that was it for this week. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay tuned with our weekly Bitcoin and Ethereum price analysis and smash that like button. Also, check out our WonderBit trading platform, which allows you to fully automate your strategies in trading using our terminal or the TradingView bots. Best of luck with your trading.